Hi, welcome to our kitchen. I lived in France many, many years ago. I lived in Paris, and I fell in love with couscous when I lived there. They have so much incredible Moroccan food there. So couscous has become a staple in our world, and I ate so much of it there, I just could not leave it behind. So I have a really luscious, wonderful gratin, or tian, whichever you want to call it, to share with you today. It's basically couscous, which actually I can see my chicken broth. I've got a couple of cups of chicken broth going right here with a few tablespoons of butter boiling, and I'm going to take my couscous. I've got about a cup and a half of couscous I'm going to dump in. You will not believe how unbelievably simple it is to make couscous. If this is not part of your current repertoire, it would be a great, great thing to include, because all I do is put that in, and then I throw the top back on, and in 5 to 7 minutes, it will be ready to just fluff with a fork. That is so simple. So that's why I love this, because it's so no-brainer. Then, the cool thing about this gratin that I'm gonna make is I will cut up all kinds of wonderful vegetables. And you can use whatever vegetables you can find at the farmer's market or the grocery store or wherever you do all your shopping. And if it's summer, oh, you know, you've got all those fresh vegetables, which is so great. And I will put the couscous down, and I will lay the vegetables over the top in beautiful concentric circles, put some lusciousness on the top, and we'll have a complete meal. You don't even have to serve anything with that. And if you want to, this is an awesome side dish. So right now my couscous is basically doing its thing, just sitting there absorbing all the water and that little bit of butter. I also started a little while ago, I've got gorgeous onions that I've caramelized, and I've got a couple of tablespoons of garlic in there. You know, a girl just cannot cook without garlic around here. I like to cook with garlic because then when I run upstairs, I smell it all wafting up the stairs. It's just one of those smells that I love cooking in our house. Then I'm just gonna right now cut up my tomatoes and my, my eggplant. Now, in our market today, we did not have a little skinny eggplant. I love those wonderful little Japanese eggplants, but that's okay, I got this one. So you know what, like I always say to you guys, use what you can find. Do not panic when you read a recipe and you run to the market to get what you need and they do not have it. You know, don't feel like, well, now that recipe's shot, I can't do it anymore. Just improvise, and the more you learn to improvise, the more comfortable you will feel cooking, the more comfortable you will feel being able to make substitutions. You know, it happens to everybody, so don't feel like you're the only one that happens to, because believe me, there are plenty of times that I create a recipe or I find some amazing recipe that I want to cook. I get to the grocery store, and you know, of course, they don't have half of the things I want, specifically because I'm probably, you know, sometimes shopping out of season. You can see the vegetables I'm chopping. I did the tomatoes at about 1/4 of an inch. I'm doing the eggplant at about 1/4 of an inch. If you've got time and you want to, you can take the eggplant and set them aside, salt them a tiny little bit on a paper towel, and they will sort of weep water, and that's kind of a nice thing to do with eggplant. Just get a little bit out of the water out of them. I like the small Japanese eggplants better because I just think they're sweeter and they're just prettier. So I like to grow those in our garden too. So the eggplant, I may have just a little bit too much here, but that's okay. And I also don't like how big these circles are because I want this to be, you know, sort of smaller circles. But anyway, it's not a big deal. And then I've got a zucchini. Now, if you wanted to, this is also another great recipe that you can, of course, very easily substitute vegetables. Say, for instance, you are at the grocery store and they don't have these things. Well, you know, you could easily throw some potatoes into this. You know, whatever it is. You could throw peppers into this if you want to. You know, maybe you don't like the vegetables I'm using and you just flat out want to use something else. So, you know, do that. That's what's fun about this recipe is you can change it up a million different ways. What I do love about this recipe is it's so beautiful. So right about now, my couscous is probably about done. And all I'm going to do is mix those two together. And then fluff it all up, lay it in my pan. I'm going to show you a wonderful topping before I do that. So basically, I've got breadcrumbs. These are not breadcrumbs out of a can, or whatever you call those tub things. This is really breadcrumbs that I bought a loaf of bread, I cut it, and I let it dry overnight, and then I whirl them around in the food processor. Do whatever you will. I prefer them this way because I just think there's more texture and they're just more delicious. So I've got my breadcrumbs. I've got about 3/4 cup of Gruyere. You know I love my Gruyere cheese. I've got bacon. You know I love bacon. It sort of like sneaks its way into just about every other thing I'm making. You don't have to put bacon in if you don't want to. And then, the smell of summer. I've got thyme, which is just, look how beautiful smells. And it's so pretty because it also creates a wonderful look and smell to the whole recipe. And then I've got about 1/4 cup of olive oil. So I'm just gonna mix that up. Now this is so cool because it makes this perfect, really savory, yummy, decadent topping. And everyone needs a little bit of decadent in every recipe. I'd rather eat really well. Oh, look how gorgeous that is. So, you know, this is a wonderful topping. And again, this is another really fun place to play around. If you don't have these ingredients, you know, put something else in it. But, you know, this is gorgeous. And it's the kind of, it smells so good. So, let me just check my couscous. I'm guessing it's probably done. Yep. So look, I'm just going to show you. You can really tell the couscous is done because it's basically flattened itself up. That means it's absorbed all the water. And essentially at this point, all I'm going to do is grab a fork, and you can see how nicely it just fluffs. This is so great. I mean, at this point, you could just grate some cheese over it and grab a spoon and go to town with a little glass of wine. But it's also, you know, really so good. Hang on, I'm going to shut my timer off. It's so good with some onions in it. So all I'm going to do is add these onions to it because this makes kind of this wonderful base. When you buy the couscous too, I just wanted to mention, I prefer the small couscous, and the kind I'm using in this recipe is actually the quick cook couscous. That's why this all happened so quickly, literally while we were filming. So look how pretty this is. You know, it's basically, it really does work better to fluff it with a fork. It's just happier that way. So check this out. I'm going to, I want to oil my pan, and I'm going to grab my oil. And I just want to put a couple of tablespoons of oil in the pan. You know, you just can sort of eyeball that one. Get it all over so you can see. And then I'm going to, that's a little hot. Get my couscous in the bottom of the pan. Okay, and this pan, this is a pan I've had forever. I love it. But if you don't have an oval, you know, tian, just use, you know, whatever you've got. If you've got like a pie pan or something like that, that's just great too. You know, you're going to get the same results. This is just something I've had forever and I've used a million times over. And then here's the, you know, fun, kind of easy, creative part. You just basically make concentric circles. So, you know, that's all I do is I sort of keep repeating. So you can see here when I said to you that the eggplant, it would be nice if it was like a little bit smaller. You get where I'm going with that, right? So I don't know if you guys have ever made anything like this, but to us, this is a really wonderful dinner. And then I'm just going to finish this up. I'll put the topping on it, and then we'll pop it in the oven. So I needed just a tiny bit more tomato. And you know, that happens sometimes, you know, when you're in the middle of a recipe and you realize, oh, the tomatoes I bought are a little bit smaller, a little bit bigger. It just depends. Like in the summer, when we grow beefsteak tomatoes, those things are so huge. So in that case, I would probably only use like 1 tomato. And you can see I'm even tucking this under just the tiniest little bit. So you can pack this really tightly if you want to. You know, you can show us all the creative flair you've got. You know, you can kind of turn it into your own thing. If you want to, you can also do straight rows. You don't have to do the circular thing. And I even have like a little bit extra zucchini left. So I'm just going to tuck a few little pieces in here and there. So then, that's so pretty, isn't it? I mean, it's such a beautiful thing to bring to the table. Then I'm going to take all of this goodness. So remember, there's a fair amount of salt too in the cheese. So at this point, you can salt it. I usually do because I tend to like a little bit more. But you know, put a little bit of salt on it, and also, you know, Put some pepper on because I think it's always great to have some extra pepper on everything. It's wonderful. And I do also pour about 1/4 cup of white wine or so. If wine's not your thing, you could use like a little extra chicken broth. I just want to make sure this whole thing doesn't dry out. And when I cook it, when I bake it, I put it in a 375 oven, and I go for about 40 minutes. You know, sometimes it takes a little bit longer. It depends on how the vegetables are looking to me. I always want to make sure that the vegetables really look like they're cooked, especially the eggplant. There's nothing worse to me than an uncooked eggplant. Ugh, I just think it's just not good tasting. So this wonderfulness is just, I sprinkle it all over the top, and what it will do, it will melt in. And I kind of like to, you know, push some of it down in between the vegetables because you also don't want to cover up all that pretty that you just made. So, you know, get a little bit of it down there and it will melt and become all this beautiful melted Gruyere that will be so tasty, and it will add this extra flavor that you truly are going to flip over. I mean, honest to God, I could eat this for breakfast. It's so yummy. So there's the last little bit. Isn't this pretty? So I'm going to throw this in a 375 oven, like I said, 40, 50 minutes, and then we'll taste a little bit together. Our splendiferous couscous is just about done. I have been checking on it and it smells amazing. I mean, so amazing. So like I said, you guys, you know, for me, this could be a whole meal. Well, I kind of take that back. Since we have 6 people in our family, we always need a bunch of options, but I'm gonna grab it out of the oven, show you how beautiful it is. I will tell you, whoops, hot. I will tell you that I did put a little foil over the top. Isn't that beautiful? For a little while. Close that up. And you can see the cheese is beautifully melted. And I also want to tell you that while it was cooking, a couple of times I would go over and just drizzle a little bit of oil on it. You know, if that is something that you don't want to do, just kind of take a peek at it. You don't want it to get too dry on top. And like I said, cover it with foil. And that is fine. Let me find a little something. So I just want you to see how absolutely beautiful this is served. So I'm just going to take a nice scoop. The wonderful thing about the vegetables, ooh, look how pretty that is. Oh, it's like my own version of a facial. And you know, I don't get those very often with 4 little boys. Facials, I don't remember having one of those. But look how very, very pretty this is. And what I was just about to say before I got my facial was what's great about this is that the vegetables do a very nice job allowing the couscous to stay moist. Besides the fact that, you know, we poured a little olive oil on it, and also we did our little white wine business in there. So I'm just going to take a little schnivel here, see if we like it. How many times have you guys seen me nearly burn my lips off? It's all right. It's very good. Couscous is fluffy and very tasty. And the breadcrumbs, you know how I told you to kind of put them down in between? Very, very delicious. So I do hope you try this. If couscous is new to your world, I think you're going to have a new favorite.